I'm Rachel Nix. I have multiple crowns that I wear. One is Juilliard grad, so I'm in my old stomping grounds, and I like broke rules to run across the like thing. They're like, we're having a fancy screening. I was like, I'm gonna walk across. Did you see the screening out front? Everything was very important. I was like, I did college here, and I made nothing. No work at LCT3. We're good. We all went to Juilliard. So we have, let's start there because that's the most important part. I think I would work more as an actor if I was good at talking about myself, but I'd much rather introduce the dope talent that I have here. And we did survive somehow, some way. We'll tell Juilliard stories later. But Ben is this, I know we need to use this for camera purposes, so Ben Rappaport.
Do the thing, yeah. Hey, I'm Ben. I play Craig in the film. And I also went to Juilliard across the street. And yeah, things are much nicer now around here than they used to be. So it's kind of fun to see all that. But I saw a very early screening of this film a while back. So I'm excited to see what it is now. And I'm honored to be a part of it. So I hope you all enjoy Albany Road.
Good evening, I'm Lisa Arundel, and thank you. And I get to be in Christine Swanson and Michael Swanson's film. So I am thrilled, and I have beautiful family and wonderful friends here, and I'm just so, so grateful to have all of you here.
I was thrilled to know people outside of the film industry, and when I spoke to them about this film, they're like, we should do a screening. So shout out to RMA, which is a fertility clinic in New York. I am an actor who went to Juilliard, who's an Oakland girl and a New Yorker. I'm a halfie at this point, but I'm very passionate about maternal health, in particular Black maternal health, and fertility is a very important piece of that puzzle because, you know, not to get too deep, but we were raised to believe we were breeders. But, you know, racial is a social construct, and we also deal with infertility issues. And I am thrilled to know people that do not look like us, that believe convening us is valuable. And I had the pleasure of auditioning for Christine and getting hired last minute to be a part of this film. And I play Morgan, and you will see that. And we have another two special guests joining us for a panel discussion after, but I would love to introduce you to a very dear adopted mommy at this point. She doesn't really love that because she. Do you love that? Is that okay? Can you have 5 kids now? Yeah. Okay. Christine held space for me in a way that I don't really have words for, and I believe she will continue to do that. She is a special creator, a mother, and a birth queen. So introduce yourself, Christine.
I am a breeder. This is going to be a very interesting conversation, sponsored by
RMA.
So much for coming, and bear with. We just had a few technical issues, and there are, if there are seats beside you, if you can scoot in, then people coming in can sit at the end and not walk across you. Okay? And what I have to say among Juilliard grads is I went to NYU.
Yeah, okay. I think what's the most important is, please, this piece is the most important. We want you to experience this together. So feel free to just be free to be in a space together. And I know we were robbed of that because of these things called COVID in life, but you made it on a Friday, so enjoy. And we'll see you soon. Okay, love you all.
About 23 or 4 or 5 years ago, I made a movie called All About You, which starred Renée, Elise Goldsberry. And while working with Renée, she was playing opposite Debbie Allen. I just thought she and Debbie had hilarious energy. And I had the idea of they should be in a road trip movie together. And I just parked that in my brain somewhere a long time ago. And then Michael's mom passed away from breast cancer. We didn't know how bad it was until the very end. And it just kind of traumatized me a little bit to not be able to go through that battle with her. And then I just kind of parked that. And then that was what incubated this story. And I wrote it maybe 20 years ago I started, then 10 years later I wrote it, and then 10 years later I finished or what have you. But I wrote it for a 30-year-old Renee.
She's only 32 though, so it's
Right. So when we finally decided to do it last year, it was like, Renee, what are we gonna do, girl? And Renee had some ideas about how to incorporate some element of her journey in the storytelling. And we dealt with some infertility issues that was highlighted by Renee's experience. And that's how we grafted that storytelling into this script. Because Renee is not 30, she's like 35. So we wanted to deal with
52 or 3, but I get confused. I'm not exactly sure. When you get to a certain age, you can't remember. You can't remember which, does it matter? I don't know. This is the birthdays come and you're just like, thank you, Lord, thank you. Just to piggyback on, can we just all give a big round of applause? She's a good friend to have, y'all. And she's an artist for the world. She tells our stories so beautifully, and I'm so grateful to have watched her journey through, just personally and professionally for the last few decades, and I'm grateful we got to work together again. But I want to say my experience as an actress coming up in this business and trying to figure out how to balance just my dream to have a family and my dream to be an actor was always, whether getting married, all of it is just it's a challenge for all of us trying to figure out how to juggle all of this. And sometimes we do it next to people who have a very different experience. So when I met Christine, she was already married to Michael, and I didn't know at the time we were filming All About You was it 1999? Were any of y'all born? She was pregnant with their first child. She didn't tell me, but she directed that first movie pregnant. She's gone on to have 4 children, but her journey has always been frustrated, if I can be candid and tell about your stuff. I'm really good at telling about other people's stuff to the camera. But yeah, her journey has always been this like brilliant artist who had just kept having these babies, these beautiful children, and frustrated because it's hard to create art and direct and do the things that she was born to do at the level she was born to do them when she was also making a spleen. And, but like raising these, if I could go on about her children, brilliant people, and I won't do that's another story. And my story was the exact opposite. Not that I was doing a million things professionally, but I was desperately trying to have children, and it was a challenge for me. And so we were always kind of living these parallel lives, but with very different family experiences and the same dreams, the same 2 dreams. And I'm going to let the doctor take over from there, or just to start us off. But I'll just say it's one of the reasons why I'm not in any way shy about how old I am is because what you get when you talk after having lived through a few decades is some later chapters in your story. And there's just a lot of testimony that is just, it's a blessing to have the testimonies that we have. And sometimes it comes out in our art, and sometimes somebody just needs to put a microphone in our face. But we know some things because we've lived through a lot of disappointment and a lot of things like that. And it's just a joy that you have stayed to listen to us talk about it.
So there's so much we can cover, but we are thrilled to have Dr. Tia Jackson-Bey among us, who is a fertility specialist and who is packaged similar to this panel and to this room, and I think that's really helpful. I am also a mother of 2 boys, but experienced a miscarriage between my boys, and I remember as I lost my baby in a public bathroom, I was like, thank God I'm already a mom, because that would really suck if I wasn't already a mom. I'd be really worried about ever being able to do that. So I share that because so much of what we experience, whether it is an early stage of a pregnancy or a loss or a challenge of conceiving, it's all in the dark. And so why I love We're in the Light right now is to discuss what is it that we need to know. There's so many things, but if you could start with if we're just thinking about, I think I would love to have this thing called a kid. And we're male or female or hetero or queer or whatever. Like, what are some things we should think about our fertility? And I want to frame it here because of the composition of this room is when, you know, the culture is, or the history and the programming is that you're a breeder. If you experience difficulty, you think it's you. And fertility is colorless because we all know race is a social construct, so.
Yeah, so I think that some of the things that are important are, one, just to have it on your mind. I think that of all of the different things that we consider of our life, our career, finances, education, where we're gonna live, who we're gonna be with, sometimes family plans can take a backseat. And I think that just may be a natural evolution for us, but I want to bring it back into the 5 and 10-year plan, so that so we're conscious of it, and so that we're thinking of it, and so that you can have discussions like this earlier. You know, you have these discussions at brunch in your 20s and with your GYN in your 30s instead of waiting until there are issues. And that happens sometimes. Sometimes people aren't really cognizant of what could be until they realize what they can't have. But I think if we're open about it, if more films featured the reality of it, and just wrote it into the storylines in a very simple way, honest way, thoughtful way, people connect. And I think that could be really important to just kind of having those conversations earlier.
She talked about the earlier concept for the film, and then, you know, me playing this part. I felt that it was important, if I was going to play this woman, her experience, 15, however old I'm supposed to be in this movie.
We don't say it. We don't say, so it's whatever you think. But my assumption would be that you wouldn't think that I was 30.
And so, and I just feel like a 30-year-old has a different experience. No judgment on it. It's just a different experience, a different relationship with her boyfriend's mother, and a different relationship with work and her life. And I just thought that if I was going to do it, we needed to add that in. And then she started casting these little boys. She casted Jay Alphonse, who's a brilliant actor. He's so fantastic, and I don't even know how old he is, but I felt that it was important. I just felt like a part. You know, there are all kinds of relationships, and it was an opportunity, I thought, to just talk about a relationship where the two people might not be the same age, and what kinds of issues might affect their moving forward. And clearly, that could be career, and it could be family. That's real. It's very real in my experience, to try to find compatibility in that. We don't talk a lot about that kind of compatibility, and but I think that's real in our relationships as we grow up, is trying to figure out, well, what do you want? Well, what do I want? And while my experience was very much, I want to have children, I want to have children, I want to have children, there are so many amazing women who don't, or who've made peace with the fact that I'm doing something else. And I just thought it was a wonderful opportunity to give voice to that woman, and she allowed us to do it in a way that I thought was really beautiful.
Let's go later stage. So if we do hit that wall of like, oh, so now I'm starting and I have an issue, what would you say is step 1 versus doom and gloom, right? Like, what are our options?
So I think even before you may realize that there's an issue in like a negative way, sometimes opening up that conversation could allow space for planning. And some of that planning might involve what we call fertility preservation. And so I'm well aware that in some people's career trajectories, life trajectories, financial plans, you know, the optimal time to have children might not align with what's happening in your life. And so by utilizing something like fertility preservation, you may hear about things like freezing eggs or freezing sperm, or even creating embryos and freezing those for later, could be a really important part of your plan that could, you know, benefit you much later on. It doesn't mean that that's the way everybody has to go, but it's an option that's available that was not available to previous generations, and that could be a huge help, especially if you're finding that You want to dedicate yourself to your career. You want to have time to travel or invest in yourself or invest in your family or invest in your craft in a different way. And so that's one that I think is super important. The next step is to not stay quiet. If you feel like something is not right, you guys have been trying or you've been wanting and knowing that you're not using contraception, the next step is to kind of like verbalize that so that you're not holding it in. And when you start to discuss this with peers, family, church groups, sorors, whatever, then you just allow, oh, that hasn't happened for you. Well, this was my experience. Maybe you should see a doctor. Maybe you should see my doctor. This is who it worked for before. And so again, that communication piece, I think for, particularly for professional women, for women of color, African-American women, there's a specific kind of stigma about family building in this way, and particularly about, this misconception that infertility could only apply to certain groups. It applies to everybody. Men, women, hetero, queer, any age group, doesn't make you exempt if you're younger. And so I think that's really important just to be open in that way.
Because your experiences were different as both artists, how did that affect you, being that your plan for career and motherhood?
For me, it's probably a blessing looking back that it was so hard for me to have children, because I think the harder something is, the more you value it. And I have a very good ability to complain. Really good at it. And one of the things I don't complain about, or I do, but I don't really put my heart in it, is being tired because I'm doing something for my kids, doing, what I can't do because I have children, I don't complain about in the way that I might if I could take it for granted that they exist. But yeah, so through what I call the lifeblood of my career, through the 30s, that's the same time where we were really pushing to have children. And I would get pregnant and I would have miscarriages. I had several miscarriages. And the harder it was, the more both things are hard. It is hard to do this career. I don't know how many artists are in the room. You all look like you are. I don't know. You all. I would hire you all. But yeah, that's hard. It is hard to follow our dream, that vision quest that we have for whatever that career thing is that we want to do. It's hard on its own. And you just take for granted that the other things are going to happen in your life. You just take for granted that by osmosis, you're going to meet someone and fall in love, and then you're going to get pregnant. It's going to work out in these periods between, I don't know, it's absurd. But for whatever reason, no one ever tells us in school that that's something that we should be intentional about. It's like extracurricular. And at some point, it became clear that it's not. It's actually something, if I wanted, that I'd had to really focus on. And so I had to figure out in this very kind of abstract, maybe I'll have a job, maybe I won't, if someone's considering me for something and I'm also trying to do IVF, I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know what the plan is. So I found myself calling directors and saying, so I really want to do this job, but I might be pregnant, but I don't know. It's awkward and terrible. Or I got this job, I am pregnant, but who knows if it's going to last. This was my life. I actually have a documentary coming out, I have to say, called Satisfied, and it's literally the story of my life through Hamilton and this experience. So it speaks to that period directly. But that was my experience, and it was challenging, and I look back and I see the blessing in it. I see the blessing in kind of the appreciation I have for my family. I see the blessing in the appreciation I have for my career. But it was challenging and hard. And the greatest thing is that I can talk to other people about it, so that you understand that this is something that everybody is doing in their brain, no matter what they think they want from their careers. Do you want to talk about your experience?
I had 4 kids back to back to back to back, and had no trouble conceiving. Was surprised every time I was pregnant.
Like, you pregnant again?
There was a time I did not want to tell Renee. So there's an element of like, it's sad, but shame surrounding like friends who couldn't conceive. I didn't want to make her feel more sad. And she's awesome to she's the godmother of all
I
four
got a
my
lot of
kids.
god kids. Let me tell you, that's what happens. That's what they do. They give you their god kids. You're like, oh my God, you can share mine.
So the only takeaway I would add is I chose not to work for 15 years straight.
No, but that's a real thing.
Did you choose not to work? Did you?
I don't know how I could have raised 4 kids with the kind of schedule that I have today.
The only reason why I just question the verb is because I just want you to share with them the pain that actually exists in being a parent when you feel like you're making a choice that you don't regret for your family, but you also don't know that you'll ever get another shot again at your career. So so she had a whole other kind of pain that she felt like she was making a sacrifice for.
And Renee knows it so well because I complain to her.
So she didn't feel that bad, okay?
Right. So
That was a private conversation that's not public.
It worked out. What Renee said about hindsight, looking back, and you appreciate the choices you could make and the choices you could not make. I would do it all over again, the same way we were able to raise each of our children, not a single nanny, and I can feel the result of that. I would do it all over again. Guess what? When I came back to work, they were looking for Black female directors, and I've been working nonstop. So there's that.
Let me just say, I've had like 7 or 8 nannies, so let's not judge, okay? Can I say that?
I got one consistent
okay,
one,
Rachel.
and my friends are like, Mimi ain't going nowhere. I don't care how broke you are, we ain't getting rid of Mimi. So, but with that said, okay, I want to ask this question, which we'll toss then to her. And I know, it is what it is. Is there anything you wish you would have known traversing that path?
I just put this little post on Instagram. I was thinking about it. Somebody said you should write something about what I didn't know in my 30s, and I started to, and I put a really bad post out that really just says, if I had to tell myself at 30 that it was going to work out, let's say, I don't know that I should have, because that's just the battles of that season in my life. I have a whole new set of battles now. There's a whole new set of things that are not obvious, not easy, not forthcoming. That's just that set of things. And the things that you have to learn is what I was going to say about you. Her company is called Faith Film Works. They have the audacity to have what looks like really stupid faith. Just even in the making of this film, and their investment in this film, self-financed film that will be in movie theaters, and that's what you have to, I think, learn and develop when you have no idea. There's no promise. I always believed in my heart that it's not promised to me that I would have a family that looked a certain way. But what is promised to me is that I will have peace about what happens in my life. That's what I believed, I couldn't. People would say, just name and claim what you want. I don't believe in that. I do believe that peace is promised. And that's what we didn't have in that season I did not have peace. Even when I had one child, I wasn't ready to make the picture on top of the fireplace because I felt like there was something else. And I believe the lack of peace is the fuel that made me try so hard, try everything. I don't think that the lack of peace is wrong. I think it moved me to figure out what am I going to do till I feel like that picture is right. And I have it. I have my son. I have an adopted daughter who's beautiful and I love, and our family now feels like this is it. But if I had known that, I would have missed the opportunity that comes in just striving and not knowing, because I'm in it now with a whole new set of problems.
I think that's a perfect thing, like for our doc, is when we come in striving, yearning, how do you counsel someone through when they feel like they've hit a wall, when perhaps they still have faith and are comfortable with the lack of peace, or when they're not?
Yeah, so one thing that really struck me about your relationship is, you were on, friends, but on different paths for your family building, but we're still able to support each other. And I think that being able to find that support around you, whether you find it at home or in family or friends or new friends, sometimes people have fertility friends and fertility groups, a therapist if you have to pay for it, really is invaluable. And so I really kind of charge everybody in this room with being that friend to someone else, because you just never know what they could need. A listening ear, a meals, childcare for the other child while they go to the appointments. And it really just goes so far. When people kind of come and they have hit that wall, but I know that there's more there. We talk about it. I'm frank. I had these conversations today about, giving yourself grace. First and foremost, I give them plain, blunt information so that they can feel informed and make the right decision for the next step for them. And sometimes that's a pivot. What's it going to look like on the other side? Maybe it looks like something different than you imagined. Or maybe it looks like a rest for a month or two so that you can regroup and do things that are important to you and take a trip and have sex without feeling like this has to be the one. Like, you get to calm yourself and regulate your nervous system a little bit, and then you can re-enter care. And so is a multi-pronged approach. Sometimes we look at diet. Sometimes we talk about sleep. Sometimes we say, okay, is this a busy time at work and do we need a little break, and we can regroup. And so it's definitely a multi kind of pronged approach, but I always start with just really being honest and making sure that they have the support around them that they need.
Well, we have a few more minutes, and anyone have any pressing questions they would like to ask of anyone here? Yes.
I have a question. So I noticed with the character in the film that her love interest, Jay Alphon's character, does not have any children, and he's okay with being with someone who cannot have children. What was your process like in deciding if this is a person who, after this time has passed, has a child, and so now maybe that's not a big deal? But because it's like when you're dating someone and you have children and you decide that you don't want to have children, that's one thing, right? Because then it's like, well, does he have kids? Because I ain't trying to have no more. I'm done, right? But then it's also, well, I can't have any. Is he going to be okay with that too? And so I guess in deciding which end he would fit, what kind of man this would be, I thought that was very interesting that there was a man out there who is willing to be with a woman that he loves that cannot conceive, because that is something that we don't see often.
But it exists. Right. So I think it's so important to share these stories because it exists. And I think there's an undue burden on women that they think that their partner is going to leave if they aren't successful. First of all, you're a couple. And so this is not just her problem, it's together. And I try to remind people of that, but I see it and I feel it's palpable of this concern that this is the only way that I'll be accepted, which I think in the majority of relationships, you find a new way and you find it together. And so I think that's really important to remember. And I'm so glad that was what was showcased.
I love that she, because it's never a question. It's you meet him and he's like, I don't care about that. It's never his issue. It's always hers. And so I love the Paula character that Lynn Whitfield played so beautifully. In the very end, right before she kind of passes out, she says, "No, you need to believe that you are worthy of this kind of love." And that's bigger than a fertility issue. That's the real issue we have in our relationships, is not what the other person can do or not do. It's your ability to believe that you are lovable as you are, regardless of, everybody has something. You know, I want this, you want that. I mean, you know, I have this job, I don't have this job, I have this. There's no end to the reasons why we might even subconsciously feel unlovable. But the biggest blocks we have in our relationship are really in our own hearts and heads. And the beauty of this story is that Paula, the mother-in-law, really nailed it, and that's what set her free. Not the man, but she was able to set herself free.
And we also have to address the fact that women are not the only individuals that could possibly be infertile. Men can also be infertile. Okay, there you go. One last question. Yes.
Talk about how to be supportive of someone who's going through, maybe it's not even infertility, it could just be not finding a partner or not being able to, you know, whatever the reason is that they're not able to. So there's a lot, this whole cat woman, childless cat mom. Well, he's canceled, so. We celebrate the glory of Oprah's and her purple outfit and the DNC and Kamala's amazing and all of this, but these are women who journeyed their life and created great and brilliant things, but children are not one of them. But what I find in my own journey is I have friends that are going through this and they're not settled in that. And I don't know how to ally for them properly.
I'll start this and let you continue. So when I founded my nonprofit, it's called Birth Queen. Women give birth to many things. And what I received it, and I don't hear it as a plural, I hear it as a mantra. And so if I could pass on to you that you can remind her that she's a birth queen and to continue to give birth to everything that she receives from the divine because she's divine, that is what matters, right?
Well, she said something that was really interesting and that I didn't know, and that she felt bad calling me. I didn't know that. And she didn't want, she was like, oh, I don't want to tell her I'm pregnant again. You know what I mean? I didn't know that she went through that. I mean, I encourage people to not assume that, you know, I have something that you don't have. And so just being around me would be painful to you. I think what's most painful is that assumption. It would be hurtful to me to know that somebody wouldn't share the beauty in their life because it might be hard for me. And I'm not going to lie, it can be hard. I will never forget the day. I'm from Houston, and I flew home, and coming from the airport, and my friends, all my girlfriends, my best friends I grew up with, were having a get together, and I pulled up to where it was, and right before I got out of the car, it hit me that all of my 4 best friends had daughters the exact same age, and I just went, and I just like sat in the car. I couldn't get out of the car. I'd flown all the way from New York to Houston. I couldn't get out of the car because I didn't realize I will never have a daughter that gets to be best friends and grow up with them no matter what happens. Even if this works, I won't have that. And they're all my God kids. Do you know what I mean? It just hit me like I can't get out of the car. And I called this girl, Jill Willens, who I've never seen since, but she was like a fertility friend. I met her at the clinic. I was like, Jill, I'm here. Like I called her, just like she said, you have to have another kind of friend. So it's not that it's not hard. I got out of the car, it was fine, and it's all wonderful. And here's the beauty. Let me tell you what's better than kids the same age. Kids like 3 years older. Look at those kids. He's going to college right now. He's supposed to be in college right now, but he's too good of a son. He's starting USC. Say, give it up. My son is going into the 10th grade. Look at them. Look at that, 3-4 years works out. See, the Lord knew what he was doing. So you can't see that, but the point is, it's not that it's not hard. It's not that you don't have minutes where you're like, this hurts me. Your man is so good. Some things hurt our feelings. And then we keep going, but keep us close to you. And don't be ashamed of God's blessing in your life, ever. It's contagious. Anyway.
Hey, come on, final word, Doc.
No, I was just going to add the flip side of that. So when you have a friend who's going through something and it is hard, I just had a conversation yesterday. Someone's intentionally not going to work one day next week because there's a baby shower in the office. And she can't do that, and that's okay. But you know how we can be in our communities. She didn't come to my shower. She didn't come to my bridal party. She didn't show up to my wedding. She didn't want to come. So I think you also have to kind of flip it and give people some room and grace. It's not the end of the day if they don't make it to their event. Hopefully they're gracious and say, you know, I'm not going to be there. They send a gift or whatever the case may be, but give people some room and some grace when they're going through something that they might not be able to support you in the same way that you expect, and hopefully it can come back around, you know?
That's just in any situation, people are blessed with things. It's crazy how that happens. When you grew up and I said I wanted to do this and you said you wanted to do that, and everything you said you wanted happens in my life. And everything I said I wanted happens in yours. Is it an accident? I don't know why that happens, but that happens. And it'll grow us up. That's how friendships grow us up.